In a sprawling mansion in the heart of a bustling African city, Maya is living a life far removed from her dreams of luxury and ease. Once the admired big girl of her university days, Maya's decision to marry a wealthy older man, Alhaji Suleiman, as his fifth wife has trapped her in a gilded cage. What seemed like the perfect life, a promise of riches and prestige, has become a labyrinth of competition, manipulation, and unrelenting misery. As she navigates the ruthless power dynamics among the wives, the constant surveillance of her husband, and her deepening sense of despair, Maya makes choices that lead to devastating consequences. Her downfall is as swift as her ascent, leaving her destitute and a shadow of her former self. Maya walked into the lecture hall, her designer bag slung over her shoulder, her confidence radiating like sunlight. She was known as the big girl among her peers, the one who always had the latest phone, the most expensive perfumes, and a car that turned heads on campus. Little did they know that her affluence came from a man twice her age, a man with 4 wives and children who adored him. The moonlight spilled through the windows, casting shadows on the lavish furniture in Maya's room. Adamu stood at the doorway, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of defiance and desire. Maya knew this was a line she couldn't uncross, but as he stepped closer, her longing for freedom and affection overpowered her reason. Maya strolled into the university cafeteria, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, each step a symphony of self-assurance. Conversations paused as heads turned to admire her presence. Clad in a designer dress and carrying a handbag that cost more than most students' tuition, she epitomized what her peers aspired to be. Her reputation as a big girl was well-earned. Every weekend she returned from lavish dinners at 5-star hotels, her phone buzzing with messages from friends wanting to hear about her escapades. To them, Maya was living the dream. To her, it was simply survival. Behind her radiant smile was a secret. Her benefactor, Alhaji Suleiman, a businessman with a string of investments and a fleet of luxury cars, funded her lifestyle. He was married, of course, married to 4 women to be exact. But that was irrelevant to Maya. All she saw was the financial stability he provided, the monthly allowance, the flashy gifts, and the prestige of being associated with wealth. At dusk, Maya sat in her cramped dorm room, staring at the text message she had just received. It was from her mother, a request for money to buy seeds for planting. Her parents were farmers, toiling under the sun in a remote village far removed from the life Maya now lived. Maya sighed as she transferred a portion of her allowance to her family's account. The guilt gnawed at her, but she convinced herself it was a necessary sacrifice. "What choice do I have?" she whispered. "They need me." Her upbringing had been modest, defined by endless days of helping her parents on the farm. University had been her escape, and Alhaji had been the means to fund it. Each time she sent money home, she told herself that her actions were noble. "They'll never understand how much I've given up for them," she thought, brushing away tears of frustration. Maya met Alhaji at an upscale restaurant, the air thick with the scent of expensive cologne and freshly grilled fish. He smiled at her with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. "You've been good to me, Maya," he said, his voice deep and deliberate. "I want to make you my wife." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had expected many things, more gifts, perhaps even a trip abroad. But marriage? The idea of becoming his 5th wife was daunting, yet it carried undeniable allure. Marriage would secure her position, granting her a permanent place in the world of affluence she had come to love. "Will you let me take care of you forever?" he asked, placing a diamond-studded ring on the table. Maya hesitated, then nodded. The ceremony was a spectacle. Hundreds of guests filled the grand hall, dressed in vibrant aso ebi that shimmered under the chandelier lights. Maya's family, though overwhelmed, wore their best clothes and tried to blend in with the city elites. As Maya walked down the aisle in her embroidered lace gown, she felt a mix of pride and unease. The applause was deafening, but when she looked at Alhaji's other wives seated at the front, their smiles didn't reach their eyes. This is the beginning of my new life, she told herself, ignoring the chill that ran down her spine. Maya's arrival at Al-Haji's mansion marked the start of her descent into a world of unspoken rules and simmering tensions. The house was a palace, with sprawling gardens and luxurious rooms, yet it felt stifling, like a cage. Fatima, the first wife, greeted her with a cold handshake. "Welcome," she said, her tone laced with indifference. The other wives, Aisha, Zainab, and Hajara, hovered in the background, exchanging glances. Maya soon learned that her presence had disrupted the delicate balance of power among the wives. Fatima, as the eldest, wielded the most authority. Aisha, sharp-tongued and quick to anger, was openly hostile. Zainab pretended to be friendly, but often made cutting remarks. Hajara, the youngest before Maya's arrival, seethed quietly, her jealousy palpable. Maya's dreams of wealth and freedom began to crumble. Al-Haji, once generous during their courtship, now treated her like an accessory. Her monthly allowance dwindled, and she was forbidden from leaving the house without permission. "You are my wife now," he said one evening, sipping tea in the living room. "Your place is here." The walls of the mansion seemed to close in on Maya. She had traded one form of poverty for another, this time emotional and spiritual. Fatima was the first to assert her dominance. She instructed the servants to prioritize her needs and dismissed Maya's attempts to offer suggestions. "Respect is earned, not given," Fatima told her one evening after dinner. Aisha was more confrontational, often mocking Maya for her lack of children. "What good is a wife who can't produce heirs?" she sneered during a family gathering. Zainab, the third wife, was subtler. She befriended Maya, sharing gossip about the other wives, only to twist her words and spread lies. Hajara, once the youngest and most favored, became Maya's biggest obstacle. "You think you're special because you're new?" she hissed one night. "You'll see how quickly he gets tired of you." Fatima, the first wife, ruled the household like a queen. Though her outward demeanor was calm, she wielded her power with precision. Servants scurried to fulfill her demands, knowing that crossing her meant risking their jobs. Maya learned quickly not to challenge Fatima. During her first week, she innocently asked the cook to prepare a special dish. Fatima noticed and summoned her to the sitting room. "In this house, we have a system," she said, her voice firm but polite. "All requests go through me. It's better that way." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. From that day, Maya avoided direct confrontations with Fatima, but secretly resented her control. Aisha, the second wife, was Maya's most vocal adversary. She made no attempt to hide her disdain, frequently mocking Maya in front of the others. One afternoon, as they gathered in the garden for tea, Aisha turned to Maya with a sly grin. "You're so quiet these days. Missing your university friends? Or perhaps you're realizing this life isn't as glamorous as it seemed." The other wives chuckled, but Maya felt the sting. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay silent. Aisha thrived on provoking her, and Maya knew better than to give her the satisfaction. Zainab, the third wife, was the most deceptive. She acted like a confidant, often pulling Maya aside to share gossip about the other wives. "Fatima is losing her grip," Zainab whispered one evening. "You're young and beautiful. Al-Haji will favor you soon." Maya was flattered, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Zainab had ulterior motives. Her suspicions were confirmed when Fatima confronted her a few days later. "I hear you've been spreading rumors about me," Fatima said, her eyes narrowing. Maya realized Zainab had twisted her words, setting her up to look like a troublemaker. From that point on, she kept her distance from Zainab, though the damage to her reputation was already done. Hajara, the fourth wife, was once the youngest and most adored. Maya's arrival had relegated her to the background, and she hated it. During a family dinner, Hajara made a pointed comment about Maya's lack of children. "Al-Haji must be wondering if he made a mistake," she said, smiling sweetly. "After all, a wife's true value is in the heirs she provides." Maya felt the blood rush to her cheeks. She glanced at Al-Haji, hoping for a defense, but he remained silent, focused on his plate. The humiliation was unbearable. As the weeks turned into months, Maya felt increasingly trapped. Al-Haji's affection, which had seemed boundless during their courtship, now felt transactional. One evening, she asked him for money to send to her parents. "I've already given you your allowance," he replied curtly. "But it's not enough," Maya pleaded. "They're struggling and—" "You're my wife now," he interrupted. "Your loyalty is to this household." The conversation ended there. For the first time, Maya realized how little power she had. When Adamu returned from the United States, the atmosphere in the house shifted. His charm and confidence captivated everyone, including Maya. Adamu's arrival brought a breath of fresh air to the suffocating household. Tall, confident, and worldly, he carried himself with the ease of someone who had seen the world and mastered it. Maya felt drawn to him, not just for his charm, but for the sense of freedom he embodied. For the first time in years, she began to hope, though she knew her thoughts were dangerous. He was nothing like his father, young, modern, and full of ideas. Over time, he began to notice Maya's unhappiness. "Is everything all right?" he asked one afternoon as they sat in the garden. Maya hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but something about Adamu made her feel safe. "It's complicated," she said finally. Adamu nodded, his expression understanding. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Maya found herself drawn to Adamu in ways she couldn't explain. He was attentive, kind, and everything her husband was not. One evening, as they walked through the garden, Adamu shared stories of his time in America. Maya laughed more than she had in months, forgetting her troubles for a moment. "You deserve to be happy," he said, his voice soft. Maya's heart raced. She knew her feelings were forbidden, but she couldn't help herself. The tension between Maya and Adamu reached its breaking point during a family trip to the countryside. One night, while the household slept, they found themselves alone in the guest house. "I can't stop thinking about you," Adamu confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya hesitated, torn between guilt and desire, but the loneliness and frustration of her life overwhelmed her, and she gave in to the moment. A few weeks later, Maya discovered she was pregnant. Panic set in as she realized the implications. If Al-Haji found out, her life would be over. She confided in Adamu, who promised to support her. "We'll figure this out," he said. "You don't have to face this alone." But their secret was impossible to keep. One of the servants overheard their conversation and reported it to Aisha, who wasted no time in exposing Maya. The household erupted in chaos when the truth came out. Al-Haji confronted Maya in front of the other wives, his face red with anger. "You've brought shame to my name," he roared. "Pack your things and leave." Maya begged for forgiveness, but Al-Haji was unmoved. He disowned her on the spot, stripping her of everything he had given her. Maya returned to her village with nothing but the clothes on her back. Her parents, humiliated by the scandal, refused to take her in. She wandered the streets, searching for a place to stay, her once glamorous life a distant memory. The village where Maya sought refuge was no longer the home she remembered. Word of her scandal had spread, and the whispers followed her everywhere. Women avoided her, clutching their children tightly as if her misfortune might be contagious. Men leered, offering help that came with conditions Maya couldn't accept. Her parents, once proud of her achievements, were now ashamed. Her mother refused to meet her eyes, and her father barely acknowledged her presence. "You've disgraced us," he said one night. "You brought this on yourself." Maya slept on a mat in the corner of their modest home, her dreams haunted by visions of the life she'd lost. Maya had clung to the hope that Adamu would come for her, but weeks turned into months with no word. She heard rumors that he had returned to the United States, distancing himself from the scandal. When she finally managed to contact him, his response was cold. "I can't help you," he said. "I'm trying to rebuild my own reputation. You should do the same." The finality of his words broke something inside her. She realized she was truly alone. Maya's pregnancy progressed in silence. Her parents made it clear that the child would not be welcomed into their home. "What will we tell people?" her mother asked, her voice trembling with anger. When Maya gave birth to a son, she felt a brief glimmer of joy. But the reality of her situation quickly set in. Unable to provide for him, she made the heartbreaking decision to place him in the care of a local orphanage. As she handed over her child, tears streamed down her face. "I'll come back for you," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if it was a promise she could keep. Broken and alone, Maya wandered aimlessly until she stumbled upon a community center in the neighboring town. Run by women who had also faced hardships, it provided support for those who had been abandoned by society. One of the volunteers, Amina, recognized Maya from their university days. "What happened to you?" she asked gently. Maya hesitated before telling her story. To her surprise, Amina didn't judge her. Instead, she offered her a job teaching literacy classes to young girls. At first, Maya felt unworthy of the opportunity, but as the days turned into weeks, she began to find solace in her work. Helping others gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. One day, Maya was invited to speak at a seminar for young women. Nervous but determined, she shared her story, the allure of wealth, the traps of greed, and the price she had paid for her choices. "I thought I was living the dream," she said, her voice trembling. "But what I had wasn't freedom. It was a cage, and I didn't realize it until it was too late." Her words resonated with the audience, many of whom approached her afterward to thank her for her honesty. For the first time, Maya felt that her pain had a purpose. Through whispers and news from old acquaintances, Maya learned what had become of the other wives. Fatima, the first wife, had solidified her position as the matriarch. She controlled Al-Haji's estate after his health declined, ensuring her children's futures were secure. Aisha's sharp tongue had eventually turned on Al-Haji himself. She left the marriage, taking her children and suing him for a share of his wealth. Zainab had fallen out of favor after one of her schemes backfired, leaving her isolated and bitter. Hajara, who had once relished Maya's downfall, found herself in a similar position when a younger, more beautiful woman joined the household. Maya felt a strange mixture of pity and relief. Though they had all been rivals, their lives were just as turbulent as hers. One day, as Maya was leaving the community center, she spotted a familiar face in the market. It was Aisha, the second wife, now dressed modestly and selling handmade jewelry. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Aisha broke the silence. "You look different," she said. "So do you," Maya replied. They talked for hours, sharing their struggles and regrets. Aisha revealed that she, too, had lost everything but had found peace in her independence. "We were all trapped in that house," she said. "We just didn't realize it." Haunted by thoughts of her son, Maya visited the orphanage where she had left him. The matron greeted her with a warm smile. "Your son is healthy and happy," she said, leading Maya to the play area. Maya watched from a distance as the boy, now a toddler, played with the other children. Her heart ached with love and longing, but she knew she wasn't ready to take him back. "I'll keep working," she told herself. "One day I'll be able to give him the life he deserves." Maya poured her energy into the community center, expanding its programs and mentoring young women. Her reputation as a compassionate leader grew, and she was soon invited to join a national initiative aimed at empowering women. Though she still carried the scars of her past, Maya began to see them as a source of strength. She was no longer defined by her mistakes, but by the lessons she had learned and the lives she had touched. Years later, Maya stood on a stage, addressing an audience of hundreds at an international conference. She spoke with confidence and grace, her story a beacon of hope for those struggling to overcome their own challenges. Maya's journey to founding her NGO began with a simple realization. She was not alone in her struggles. The young women she mentored at the community center often shared stories of exploitation, abuse, and shattered dreams. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, Maya sat down with Amina, the friend who had given her a second chance. "These girls deserve more than just advice," Maya said. "They need opportunities, education, skills, and a safe space to rebuild their lives. Amina smiled. Then let's give them that. You have the story and the passion. The world needs to hear it. With Amina's help, Maya founded Hope Rising Foundation, an NGO dedicated to empowering young women and girls. The organization started small, operating out of a rented room with a handful of volunteers. But Maya's vision was clear: to create a network of support that would prevent others from falling into the traps she had. Maya used her story as the foundation for her work. She traveled to schools, universities, and rural communities, sharing her experiences with raw honesty. I wanted everything to come easy, she told one group of young girls. Money, power, status. I thought they would make me happy, but they came at a price I wasn't prepared to pay. Her words struck a chord. Girls who had considered dropping out of school to chase fleeting dreams of wealth found themselves rethinking their choices. Women trapped in abusive relationships sought her guidance, inspired by her courage to start over. Hope Rising soon became a beacon of hope. It offered scholarships, vocational training, and counseling services, transforming the lives of countless young women. As Hope Rising grew, Maya recognized the importance of collaboration. She partnered with local governments, international organizations, and influential figures to expand the NGO's reach. One of her most significant breakthroughs came when she met Neka, a renowned philanthropist who had also risen from humble beginnings. Neka was moved by Maya's story and pledged to support Hope Rising financially. With increased funding, the organization established its first permanent center, a sprawling facility with classrooms, workshops, and dormitories for girls escaping dangerous situations. Maya's heart swelled with pride every time she walked through the doors. The sound of laughter and the sight of girls learning and thriving reminded her why she had fought so hard to build this haven. Maya's work didn't go unnoticed. Invitations to speak at conferences and events poured in, from local gatherings to international summits. She became a sought-after motivational speaker, known for her authenticity and passion. At one such event in Johannesburg, Maya addressed an audience of thousands. "We must teach our daughters that their worth is not tied to the things they own or the people they impress," she said. "True success comes from within, from knowing who you are and what you stand for." Her speech received a standing ovation, and afterward, young women lined up to meet her, tears in their eyes. "You've changed my life," one of them said. As her influence grew, Maya never forgot the son she had left behind. She visited him regularly at the orphanage, watching with pride as he grew into a bright and curious boy. When he turned 6, Maya felt ready to bring him home. With the stability she had built through Hope Rising, she could finally offer him the life he deserved. Their reunion was bittersweet. Her son was initially shy, unsure of the mother he barely knew. But over time, they bonded, and Maya worked tirelessly to make up for the years they had lost. Maya's life was no longer defined by material wealth, but by the joy of making a difference. Her days were filled with purpose, overseeing projects, mentoring girls, and raising her son. She had traded the luxury of Alhaji's mansion for a modest home filled with love and laughter. The emptiness she had once felt was replaced by a deep sense of fulfillment. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, her son curled up beside her. "Mama, you're a hero," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Maya smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, my boy, I'm just someone who learned from her mistakes." Years later, Hope Rising had become a national movement, with centers in multiple states and partnerships around the world. Maya was often asked how she had achieved so much. "I didn't do it alone," she always said. "It was the people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Her story inspired countless others to rise above their circumstances, proving that even the darkest past could lead to a brighter future. Maya's journey came full circle when she returned to her university as a guest speaker. Standing in the same auditorium where she had once dreamed of wealth and status, she addressed the new generation. "Life isn't about how much you have," she said. It's about how much you give. And the most precious thing you can give is hope. As the audience erupted in applause, Maya felt a deep sense of peace. She had turned her pain into purpose, her mistakes into lessons, and her regrets into a legacy. She had finally found freedom, not in riches, but in the power to change lives.